Hi, everyone. It's June 26th, 2025, and this is the Backdrop Weekly Dev Meeting. We didn't make it last week, so we're going to catch up a little bit on a couple weeks of activity. We're going to take a look at issues for the Backdrop 132 release, as well as some issues that were raised in the forum, or topics that were raised in the forum. And yeah, we've just got a handful of people here today. We'll do some introductions to kick things off. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet. I'm the technical lead on the Backdrop project. And I'm joined here by Justin and Eli. Justin?
Justin Kaiser. I'm Kaiser JB on the internet. Haven't been to one of these for a while. I'm excited in Contribland because I soft launched a indexing with a vector database and a chatbot and with Backdrop yesterday. So, in a couple sites.
Nice. Eli, can you give a quick intro?
Hi, my name is Eli Lissick. I'm a developer with Giant Rabbit, and I'm calling from San Diego, California.
All right. Well, great. Let's see. There's been some exciting things that have happened in the past couple of weeks. I think the most exciting is that we have a new design up on backdropcms.org. This was done in collaboration with Lullabot and Giant Rabbit, and then implemented by our community members. And Justin, would you be okay sharing your screen real quick just to show what that new design looks like? Got a black box. There we go. Yay! Yeah, so here it is. We've got purple as the new primary highlight color. So links and buttons are being converted to purple from blue throughout most of the site. There's new content on the homepage, top to bottom.
Hmm.
There's some pictures of you, Justin.
Yes, I noticed that. I did notice
uh,
that.
yeah, there
Oh,
you
I
are.
forgot about I didn't notice the one on the right. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, I think it's a little funny that maybe we could find a picture of someone else for that last slot.
Tim was that was at Twin Cities Drupal Camp, and Tim was flying his drone.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a controller in his hands, and that's I'm guessing the photo was taken from the drone.
Yep.
That's great. So there's a blog post about this, um, the new design that's in the news section. If you want to read more about it in there, it's cross-linked right there as well.
Which one?
I'm really uh, there's a news section here. There it
Oh,
is,
right
that
there.
one.
That one.
Yep. And so that's the kind of recap on our new design. Here you can see it's launched a couple Fridays ago on June 13th, which
Great.
I tried to discourage Jen from launching it on Friday, but when she gets her she gets her head in something, she's gonna do it, even if it's 5 p.m. on a Friday. So yeah, so that's super exciting. I'm really thrilled about that. We also have some contrib updates. We had 3 new contrib modules in the last couple of weeks. Entity reference autofill, the tonic module, which is interesting. I think that accompanies the Gin theme, and CSS naked day, which I'm not quite sure what what that is. Disables all your CSS for a day. Some kind of tech awareness project, perhaps. So yes, thank you as always to our contributors making new modules. They're continuing to come in at a regular clip still. That actually brings us to our first topic for today. Indigo Zella raised in the forum um, a question of how to deal with abandoned projects. And this is going to be an interesting one to discuss. First of all, we already just talking about abandoned projects. We already have uh, a process for adopting abandoned projects. Like if a project has become abandoned by its original author and they're not responding in the issue queue, um, the backdrop ops/contrib GitHub repository where you apply to where you apply to get a contrib application is also the issue key for managing contrib projects. Like, I want to adopt this project because the module maintainer isn't around anymore, for example. And so at the bottom of that repository's README is the process for adopting a module that's been abandoned. But that's not what IndigoZilla is asking about here. What she's asking about is projects that are abandoned, seemingly, but nobody wants to adopt them. So a project that's been ported, for example, but is no longer working, or an integration with a third-party system, but maybe the third-party system doesn't exist anymore, where it's like, obviously, there's probably no need for a module that integrates with a service that doesn't exist anymore. So it's a good question. Like, how do we identify these projects that are abandoned? Like, how do we even identify them in the first place? And then once they are identified, what do we do with them? And I am not sure. You know, it's something that we need a policy on, because even if we did identify a project as totally abandoned and nobody was interested in it, or there's just no reason to maintain it anymore, you know, what should people do? Like, if they raised an issue in the contrib group, who has the authority and what would they do once we have an abandoned contrib project? And the first thing that occurs to me is that although it's not controllable from GitHub, when you create a new release, you can, set something as the latest release on GitHub, and you can also set something as this is a pre-release. And I believe what happens with our GitHub integration is that as long as you've marked something as a pre-release, when that corresponding project is created on backdropcms.org, it doesn't make it the recommended release until you stop checking this is a pre-release. But then once you've made one non-pre-release release on GitHub, that then becomes the recommended version, and there's no way to go back to not having a recommended version. What can be done is an administrator on backdropcms.org can edit the project on backdropcms.org and make it so they can unset any version as being recommended. And that will change the way it's displayed on the project page, saying that, it just lists it as other releases, and it doesn't highlight it as being like a supported version. But that doesn't take it out of the project browser. Once it's in the project browser, or once it has a release, whether it's recommended or not, I think it shows up in project browser. So, well, that's maybe one obvious thing that we should do, is that if there's no recommended release, we shouldn't show it in project browser. And if somebody wants their project to be in project browser, then they need to make sure that they make a final release that's not a pre-release and is the recommended version, which is what will happen automatically when they create the project as a non-pre-release on GitHub. But yeah, taking it back out of that state right now, there's nothing in GitHub to take it back out. And I'm not actually sure that you, like, I checked it out before this meeting. I was trying to figure out if there was something in GitHub where you could indicate this project has no stable version. You can go and edit your previous releases and mark them as this is a pre-release, but then it would just make the previous one before that one as being the latest release. So you'd have to go through and edit every one of your releases that you've ever had on a project and check them all as being pre-release versions, which also just isn't accurate. So yeah, it's some interesting questions there. We also, as another alternative, so this still requires an administrator, but we also could just delete the node off, or unpublish the node off of backdropcms.org, and that would take it out of project browser, and it would also take it out of backdropcms.org. But again, that requires an administrator's intervention, which the backdrop contrib group, like that repository, is a really good place. There's a lot of overlap between the people that monitor that group and the administrators of backdropcms.org. So I think if a project is identified, we've got options, but yeah, again, we need to formalize what the response is when we have an abandoned project like that. Yeah, Justin, Eli, do you have any feedback or thoughts about, managing these unmaintained projects?
I mean, it's kind of a tough one. I think what you're saying makes sense as like kind of a manual step. I've run into this as well. I know this is like maybe not really Core's responsibility, but I've run into problems with this with B as well, because like anything that exists, it will just download. And so if you're not paying attention, for example, like I think one of the biggest examples is you end up with a libraries module, and then you're like kind of in trouble trying to figure that thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
this also goes for deprecated modules, like libraries that you don't need anymore, that still show up in Project Browser and everywhere else.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's the obvious thing that we need to confirm, that if a project doesn't have a recommended release, it shouldn't show up in Project Browser. Because we need that to be the situation. I think it should be that requirement. I think that makes sense from a business management, like a community management perspective, that if a project doesn't have a recommended release, it shouldn't show up in Project Browser. And then that would at least give us the ability to edit and remove recommended versions from backdropcms.org. Because right now I don't even think that works. Editing the project doesn't remove it out of Project Browser. So yeah, there's some work to be done there. I think yeah, there's other suggestions in here. Izzy responded to Indigo Zella's question as one of the ways of identifying deprecated projects would have some kind of I don't think that he was serious about it, but having some kind of like Rotten Tomato score where it just like, that would be like, if everybody like is thumbs downing this project, then that would flag projects that are kind of harmful to our community. I think I don't want to have that be public. I don't want anybody getting spammed, like review bombed Steam style, right? Where people are coming in and like just using a massive bot attack to like downvote a project because they run a similar project or something awful like that. But it is interesting that I think that we could potentially track that information and then not display it publicly, so that we could use it as an internal management tool of like this project doesn't work. And then intermittently we could go and look on the administrative listing on backdropcms.org and look at the projects that have the most negative votes or the most flags of, this project is abandoned or something like that. And that could guide some of our decision making about like identifying abandoned projects. Yeah. On the whole, though, like it's like we've got a good problem. There's 1,400 contrib projects, and they've been around for so long now that some of them are starting to not work and they need to be removed. So too many projects is our problem, and that's a good problem to have. Okay, well, that's about all of the opining that I think I have on that topic. Do you guys have anything that you want to add?
I mean, I think that I think it's a good idea to like try to identify these, and then I think we should think carefully about what we actually do about it, because I wouldn't want to end up in a situation, for example, where like there's a bunch of contrib projects that haven't had work for a long time, but somebody has just like done some cursory thing to say like, hey, here's a jump start, and somebody can take it over. And those have
Mhm.
been like pretty useful to me in a couple of cases. And it's nice to have somebody have at least just started something, and then you can patch it up and take over maintenance. Like that's a good situation to be in.
Yep. Yeah. I also really don't want to do anything that would affect site owners. Like if I mean negatively affect them in a serious way. Like um, if you unpublish the module and like make it totally inaccessible, then the project updater won't know if there's any updates available. It'll just be like, I don't know what the state of this module is if there's nothing for it to check against. Versus if there was no recommended releases available, then project updater module will say, you know, this project is not supported, which is a better thing than than saying I don't know what the status of it is. But that does mean that sites that are running that project will they will get a like a warning in their status report that they're running. I don't think that there's a thing for unmaintained modules, but they do get a warning if they're running insecure modules. Um, so that's another consideration. Like, what does it do to our, the sites that are running these modules when we flag them as not having a stable release? I think right now there's no like a non-stable, like running a non-stable release doesn't have any um, repercussions. Like this happened in all of the Drupal 7 cycle and continues to happen over in the world of Drupal, that projects just get stuck in like alpha or beta forever and they never have they never have an official release. But as long as it's marked as recommended, then there's no complaining from project module that you're not running that you're running like not recommended code. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on. That's some interesting food for thought on that topic. Let's see. Izzy also flagged this issue. I'm sorry, I'm not able to share my screen today, but issue 6708 is an issue for views. That there's an open bug that has existed for quite a while in views, that when you have click sorting on, like when you have a table of content, for example, and then you sort by release date, for example, uh, when you sort by the release date, the default sorting um, gets overridden, so it sorts by release date, which we would expect, but the default sorting might be sort by release date first and then by title second, alphabetically. And the issue is that if you use the click sorting, it discards the other default sort values and only obeys the sort value of what was specified. So it sorts by date only and not by date and then title. And the suggestion is if you use click sorting, that should still win, but then you should also apply the other default sorts to make it so that that other sort order still applies even after click sorting. So this looks great. This has been open for a long time, over a year, and Izzy just pulled that up recently. I'm guessing it may have affected him. The merge request, sorry, pull request that IndigoZella created looks great. The only it does still it's flagged as needing automated testing, which is true. So that needs to happen before we can merge it. But it adds a checkbox like as an option, like do you want to continue to apply normal sorting after click sorting is also applied? And my first take on this is I can't imagine when you wouldn't want to do that. I would just think that you should always apply the default sorting on top of the click sorting and not have it be an additional option in views. And that's what the open pull request for Drupal does, is it just appends the default sorting rather than making an option to append it or not. But I don't know, views tends to have everything in the kitchen sink, like every option you could ever think of, even if it's not particularly like common to do it, but I don't quite know where I sit on that. I do think that at the very least, I haven't checked this. I do think at the very least it should be the default, which looks like the default is false right now. I would say that that should probably be true by default. Yeah, did I frame that problem accurately? You guys understand what I'm talking about here? Sorry, I keep pulling you in because I just don't like talking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah,
fine.
that's fine.
I understand what you're saying, and I think, I mean, views has all the options anyway, right? I think I agree with you that it should be default on. I think that's the way to go.
But you think that it should be an option, like to not append the default sort?
I think that, I don't know. It does seem like a little bit like I can't figure out a situation where I wouldn't want the default sort. Unless maybe there was some situation where like somebody, I don't know if there's some other module or something where you could put like hierarchy of click sorting and do like multiple clicks or something like that. I feel like the option might come into play at some point, but default on is a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I had wondered at one point a long time ago, like if it was possible, like I wanted to have views remember what was clicked previously. So it would sort, if you clicked on title, it would sort alphabetically. And then if you clicked on date, then it would sort by date and then title. Like it would remember the sort orders so that you could combine multiple sort orders together and have them applied that way. But that's a lot of work. I think, and I'm not sure that that's like how common that behavior is. I think that I see it in other applications, but I don't see it on websites all that often. Justin, anything to add?
No, I've I I can see where you're going. I think it should be default.
Yeah. Well, Indigo Zala flagged it as if you don't do a secondary sort and you only sort on one thing, and maybe date isn't the best example, but like published, for example, is this published or is it not? You can, if click sorting was turned on, but with that, there's only two options on, yes and no. And then what ends up happening is if you're only sorting by that one value, depending on your MySQL driver, what MySQL or MariaDB you have, the official SQL standard for if you haven't specified a sort order on a column in your order by clause, the default behavior is random. So it only sorts on the thing that you asked, and then just everything else is an undefined behavior. It will just return in whatever order MySQL decides to return in. And so that means that if you sorted by published, the order wouldn't be by title, and then published, or by date and then published. It would just be completely random, other than the published is all going to be yes followed by all of the no's. And so I think that not having it be the default, and really even having the option for like not having it turned on, I just don't see the value in leaving it to MySQL to randomly order the remaining stuff without the additional sorts applied to it. So I guess maybe you could do it from think about it from a performance perspective, that maybe, tacking on 3 or 4 sorts is going to be a lot more expensive than just one. Maybe. I could see that maybe. But yeah, I would be in favor of just having it always be on and have it be the default if nothing else. So I'll post as much to that issue, which is issue 6708. Thank you, Indigozella, for creating the pull request, and thank you, Izzy, for surfacing it today. And RG Piano has been in here too. Thanks to all of you. Okay. Next up, I've just got a couple of updates. The one exciting thing that has happened this past week is 6904, the issue to update CKEditor to the latest version. We have merged that pull request that updates us to the other side of the major API change that CKEditor 5 introduced. They changed the way that plugins are loaded in version 45 and onward. Now it's up to version 45.2. And it looked at one point that we were on the precipice of a very, very challenging problem that CKEditor had changed their APIs and was going to remove the APIs we're dependent upon next year. And that would have made it so that all of our contrib projects that provide CKEditor plugins all would have broken. But yeah, yeah, I argued with the CKEditor folks quite a bit about, I think you're being irresponsible, which the response of that is that they decided to continue supporting the DLL dynamic loaded library plugin method for a year longer. So that would have already been removed had we not complained at them. But now it's planning on being removed next year. And so since our next release is in September, and then the release after that one is in January, getting ahead of the problem is a really good thing. So Indigozella came up with a novel solution to work around this problem. And that is that she made a backwards compatibility file that just remaps all of the old namespaces to the new ones, and then everything can continue working. We did mark the old namespaces as deprecated, so if you've got an IDE for your JavaScript files, it will strike through the existing places where if you're using the old namespace, it will notify you that that's a deprecated namespace. But for the most part, it's really quite simple to upgrade from the old version to the new version. For the most part, you need to simply change the namespace from CKEditor.core whatever API you're calling to being CKEditor whatever API. You just remove the word core or you remove the word UI, and the new CKEditor structure just puts more stuff at the top level. Like from an upgrading perspective, it's quite easy, but it wouldn't have been that easy without the backwards compatibility effort that Indigozella put in. So it's great. It basically means that if you have a plugin in CKEditor 5, it will continue to work even through next year. It will be using a deprecated namespace, which you should upgrade to the new location. But even then, doing that upgrade to the new namespaces is really, really trivial. But again, both of those things would not have been easy at all had Indigozella not created this backwards compatibility layer. So it's great. It also circumvents this other problem that we had with CKEditor 5, that CKEditor 5 previously had like three, I think, different ways of loading plugins. And they got rid of the one that we were using. And then they introduced a new one. I think they got rid of two methods, because now there's only two methods of loading it. There's, I can't remember what it's called. There's UMD, and then there's like imports, I think. Import JS modules. So there's only two supported methods now. And I thought that we were going to have to move to JavaScript modules using import statements, which has a whole different set of challenges. Like our backdrop add.js doesn't know what to do with these kinds of declarations. But that whole problem was sidestepped by using the other loading mechanism, the UMD loading mechanism. So great solutions all around. So if you try out the Sandbox, or if you download the latest version of Backdrop that's just in the 1.x branch, you can try out the latest version of CKEditor with the new loading mechanism. And if we want to test it with your existing plugins, you can do that, and they should all be working. And we've got plenty of time before the September release if there's any issues to address them. So yeah, that's great news. That was a really, really big problem on the horizon, and it has just been turned into not a problem at all. Hooray! Yeah, so we're well positioned as new versions come out now. We can just update continuously using this new method. The instructions for updating CKEditor have changed. There's a README file in the CKEditor module in core about how to update it. Unfortunately, the updating instructions actually got simpler as well. Previously, we were using our own custom build script that concatenated a bunch of files together. And now you just run npm install, and then you copy the file out that's created of the dist and of the dist directory, the distribution directory. So yeah, again, good news all around. All right. One other issue that's in the 132 milestone that I think would be great is this issue 5719. This is an issue that makes it so that Views has better responsive grids. So in Backdrop Core already, when you make a grid, it uses CSS Grid to lay out the grid already. And there's a checkbox if you want to fall back to using the old tables, you can do that as well. But this issue, 5719, improves it further by making it so that you can specify like a minimum size for your individual like width of a row, and it will start wrapping the grid items onto the next row if that minimum width, if it falls below it. So that's really cool because it makes it so that not only is it CSS responsive and squishing your grid down, it makes it so that you have the option to make sure that an item is at least 100 pixels wide, for example. And if it's more than that, then they start tiling next to each other. And if it's less than that, then it starts squishing down to be smaller. So it's really pretty great. It's also technically not very complicated. The holdup on this particular issue is that there's an unintentional change because it switches the view that's on the homepage that shows the 3 cards. It switches that view to use the new grid format, which is great, but the output isn't identical to what it was before. So there's just like the visual appearance, I mean. So it should look the same as before, which I don't think that there's any reason why it can't look the same as before. But just to demonstrate that what you had before should be able to be replicated in what you have after. So I think that this just needs some modifications to the default configuration of that view, but it looks great. HerbDuel is the one leading the charge on this particular issue. So this looks like a great feature. All right. That's all the updates that I've got for today. We've got another 10 minutes left, but yeah, Justin or Eli, do you have anything else you want to bring up? Oh, it's fine. We can close early for today. And yeah, thank you both for being here and joining me in these discussions. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to end it now. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you